Sometimes this is what waking up from the Matrix looks like.
It's attraction. What? The secret is the law of attraction.
I am the reincarnation of the Buddha. Billions of dollars are attracted to me at once. I am the sorcerer of the universe.
Everything that I identified with has over time stripped away.
Siri, what does 1111 mean?
Here's what I found.
Wake up, bozo. You're on the right path. All you gotta do is listen to your heart, your soul, not your mind. What's wrong with me, man? I understand. You gotta raise your vibrations. That's all I can tell you. You gotta level up. Because it's your energy. It's your energy. That's all. You got this. You got this.
Hey, Inspired Tribe, my fellow freedom lovers. John Nolan here. Thank you so much for tuning in. It is Tuesday, July 1st, 2025. Out of the Matrix into Prime Reality. Thank you for joining us on X, Rumble, and YouTube in the live chat. We are moderator-less today. Kristin's not here. Ronnie's not here, but it's going to be a wonderful time together. Thank you for being with us. You know, it was really only recently that I started observing and paying more attention to the symptoms, to what people are experiencing, what families are going through. Yes, I observed it before, but not like I did in recent weeks and months. And what really is happening in someone's life when this awakening wave begins and when it never lets up. Because for some people, it's just like a little bit, and then you know, they don't go all the way. But for those who go all the way or can't help to go all the way, there are certain monumental implications for their lives. That's why we designed the After Awakening retreat, by the way. I'm going to talk about that a little later. But the truth is, and, you know, when I wear a shirt, I have the shirt that Kristin designed. It's awake, or wake up, or anything to that extent. I always get the questions out in public when I wear it. What does that mean? What does awaken mean, or awake? Clearly you're awake, your eyes are open, but what does it mean? And when you try to explain the concept to people, and you would actually be truthful and honest, you would say something like, it's a realization that the world at large is a cult. It's literally a cult. It behaves like a cult. It treats you like a cult. It does everything like a cult does. And when you realize that, something begins to happen inside of you. It doesn't happen all at once. It's a process. And when you think you got it, usually you kind of get slapped again, and you just go, whew. There's a whole new layer to this. And I'm comparing it to a cult because when I remember, like I've told you before, I don't feel like I've been fully programmed into the Matrix from birth, but I allow myself to be programmed enough to function in polite and normal society for long enough to have some of these traits, you know, character traits. And when this first huge wave came through me, some 20 years ago, maybe a little longer than that, I remember that there was a point where I could not pretend any longer. Like I couldn't pretend to go along with things any longer. I was physically incapable of keeping my mouth shut during conversations. When somebody said something that was so outrageous to me because it was the big, you know, sort of one of those big program lies, I couldn't help but say something about it. and it started to get noticed. And that was when I realized, wow, when you start speaking up, it isn't the cult, it isn't the big institutions, it isn't some big power groups that start pushing back. It's your friends, it's your family, it's your closest people that incredibly react in very, very powerful ways. So why? Is it really a cult? Let's examine this a little bit. How do you define a cult? A cult is any system that demands obedience, suppresses independent thought, and punishes dissent. It controls you with fear, manipulates your choices, and convinces you that leaving it means losing everything. Well, it doesn't look like this. See, when I talk about the cult, it doesn't look like in this image here. This is understandable. This is what we've seen in the documentaries. This is what we've seen with certain extreme groups that they wear uniforms, they worship a leader. In real life, it doesn't quite look like it, but actually very similar. What do people do? They within the spectrum, within the boundaries that society sets, they belong to certain clubs, boxes, political parties, political orientations, sexual orientations. Everything gets its own little cult box. And within that own little cult box, there are belief systems that are cherished. There are certain ways to dress that are cherished. There are certain ways to speak. If you think about the last few years, the whole everything that came up in the LGBTQ plus community, it takes you about 2 seconds to see if someone identifies with that community. They show it on every level. There are hallmarks, right? But it's the same with, let's say, certain Christian groups or religious groups. It's the same with other religious groups. It's the same with political parties. It's the same with sports teams. It's the same with everything. It has its own identity, belief system, hallmark. But they all, and this is what most people don't get, they all belong ultimately to the same overarching club. And this is the cult here. This is what the cult demands: obedience to a central authority. In other words, you are allowed to question an elected official. You are allowed to question your president, your prime minister. That it'll get opposition, but you're allowed to do that. What you're not allowed to do is to question the underlying office, for example. You're not allowed to question the validity of the system itself. That's not allowed. You can question the person, but not the institution. The institution is holy, it's sacred, it's an eternal truth in the cult. Conformity is demanded, which means that certain behaviors are expected of everyone within the system, right? There you can express yourself sort of kind of freely, dye your hair, dress the way you want, but certain other things are demanded. For example, all problems that we discuss as a society, doesn't matter what they are, ultimately when you break it down and you ask, so what is the solution? Then ultimately the answer of the cult will always be vote for a different person. That is the conformity. You need to fall into that niche. You can't have a solution that is outside of voting, for example. No. This needs to be brought into the cult system. It's an us versus them mentality. So within this huge overarching cult, all these different groups have to continually be at odds with each other. That's part of it, right? But also every group perceives itself to be superior, and we hold the truth. And I want to share something with you here, a story of that sort of really drove this home for me. So during the last 5 years, I've said this many, many times, and this is why the subject is so important to me. Millions of people have started to awaken and have started to not go back, right? So the COVID era brought people to this realization something is terribly wrong here, but then a lot of people didn't stop. However, there are people and people that became our friends over time, where I'm now puzzled at observing their behavior, because I go, you saw through this, like you saw through the 2020 era, you saw through all the manipulation, but then you stopped. Then you said, no, 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 I can't give up these institutions of the cult. I can't give up my belief in them. I can't give up my allegiance to them, because this is my identity, whether that's political boxes or sports teams or whatever. I'm not saying don't watch a sports game, but it's the identifying with that tremendous amount of loyalty and almost addiction and investment in that team that makes it so cult like. And I've been watching people see through the bullshit of the 2020 era so clearly. They could see it all. They could see how the medical, the science, the political, the psychological, everything worked together. And then they reverted back to the same old standards of, oh, it's them, it's the liberals, it's the Democrats, oh, it's these non-religious or non-Christian people, whatever the belief is. And I just go, holy moly, how do you not see that it's exactly the same thing? And that's mainly because when you go through with it, when you actually go through with this awakening experience, which you can't force it, you can simply allow it. It's going to come into your life. But when you actually allow it, it washes over you over and over and over and over again. And every time that you hold on to some old belief, some old box, some old something, it cleanses it once again. It's painful. It's unnerving. It gives you anxiety, sometimes sadness, all of the things makes you angry, but still you're allowing it because the truth matters more than everything else. But there are a lot of people who don't go all the way. They fall back into that fear-based control. But what are they afraid of, really? The first thing they're afraid of is the reaction of others. Is what will my former peers think if I actually tell them what I really see? And then it's the fear, for example, of loneliness, isolation, not being part of the crowd, not having peers any longer, not having a clique, not having a group, not having coherence with my family any longer. That is a huge fear that people have. And so they hold back. But that is complete cult behavior. Information control. You're allowed to, let's say in the truth and freedom arena, in alternative journalism, I've seen this over the last years, that it wasn't like that before, but now in the last 5 years, this is what the alternative media has become. There is a field of subjects that they're allowed to cover, and they can have wild theories within that field, but they can never go beyond it. They can never question the system itself, the institutions itself. They can never go outside of this construct, outside of this system, and question the whole thing. That's not allowed. They can't go there because the code says until here and not further. It functions on rituals and repetitions, and you'll see you see this, like I said, with the sports teams, what they chant, with political parties, what they chant, a slogan, abbreviation, a certain kind of dress. It needs those visuals and repetitive patterns to continually enforce it into the nervous system, into the brain, into the habitual patterns. It needs that to happen. And it needs to a cult always gives you the illusion of choice. It's usually what's it called? Binary choices. So it's this or that. It's a very Hegelian dialectic where, if you don't do this, that's going to happen. Like, that's the only way this could play out. It's very much the cold thing. And it really wants to isolate people from other views, from engaging with others. So the cult always keeps its people very close to the vest. This is a system that was built over millennia, and we are living smack at the center of it, and we interact with it. Don't get me wrong. It's not like I don't interact with it. But there's a vast difference between interacting with it and being a part of it, or believing in it, or associating with it. But here's where this becomes problematic. We are social beings. No matter which way we slice it, no matter how much some of us enjoy alone time, being with our thoughts, being quiet and all that, but every one of us sooner or later seeks contact, a hug, a conversation, exchange, intimacy, love, all those things that we're hardwired to want in life. And when we go through this awakening journey, when we deprogram from the cult, it's not just a hostility from the people who are still in it, who want to fight you on it, but it's that we lose that contact. And the problem is, even if you want to pretend just to have more contact, it doesn't work anymore, because your heart won't allow you to do it. Your spirit won't allow you to do it. It's quite difficult, actually. This is the thing. People think the cult looks like, like you would see it in a movie, but the truth is it's embedded in everything, in education, in science, in politics, in the media. The system is embedded in everything. And, I told you all that Kristin and I were, we were part of a big political campaign 12, 13 years ago, maybe a little longer. And it was actually a great campaign, because the candidate was the one who started the whole thing. He wasn't part of an established party. A great movement, great values. And then as soon as something like that gains traction, certain people start to enter the field. They're the infiltrators. Okay. Can you still see me? Okay, we're back, I think. What I noticed that happened is that when we were in meetings where strategy was discussed, or where events were discussed, or promotional activities, whatever, there was a set of suggestions that all the advisors gave that was within the normal spectrum of thinking. Some a little more edgy, and some a little more center. But when we came up with an idea that has never been done before, or was not part of their thinking because it was out of the box, that was met with such resistance. It was the fear of the cult operatives of, we can't show people that there is more to this. We can't invite them to think bigger. We want to invite them to think within the little boxes, to put their, to make their voices heard, to vote for our candidate, and then move on. And we were saying, no, we want to invite people to ask the bigger questions, to go and question everything that's in this system. And because the candidate was that kind of person anyways, it was perfect. But the operatives around the candidate, they fought so hard to not allow that to happen. This is because the cult cannot have people question the system itself, the institutions. It cannot, because that's when it loses. That's when people see through it. That's when the facade starts to break down. So this is what happens. This is what happens. This is what happened to me. My big first field of research, inner research, was the spiritual field. That was, I don't know, at 14, 15, I don't know, but it was that field. And then, I sort of got scared of the big things that I saw and felt, and I pulled away from that, and I wanted to belong. I was an athlete. I was always in music, but I was an athlete, and I wanted to belong. I wanted to be able to relate to my teammates and them to relate to me. Not that it worked out, but I wanted that. And then later, years later, some big things happen in the world. And I remember spending thousands, I think thousands of hours researching the ins and outs of 9/11. And the way that in the beginning I looked at it was, oh, this is clearly a conspiracy. And there are certain players, and then there are certain motives, and things wanted to be accomplished through that. But the longer you're in it, the more you see the system, the cult behind it, and the vast implications. And every time that I thought I had reached the top layer, there was another layer to go through. And eventually, you start questioning everything, everything that is in existence in this world, in this system, absolutely everything. Nothing is off limits. And that's what scares the people around you, because what you're questioning is the fabric of their reality. It's what they base their lives on, their beliefs on, their hopes and dreams on. They base their everything on that. And you are questioning that very thing, and you're telling them to their face, it's not actually true. It's, you can believe in it if you want to, but it's not true. This is not really how this works. This is not what this really does. I remember having a conversation with my dad years ago, many years ago. Imagine this. My dad, a businessman, studied economics at a prestigious university. All the bells and whistles that you could have as a businessman, all the accolades and everything. And I had this discussion with him, I don't know, 10 years ago. And we talked about the monetary system. And I said, Dad, it's all bullshit. When the government says we're $37 trillion in debt, it's all bullshit. To whom? Who creates the money? How does money come into existence? Like, there is no money. There's only credit notes. There are only instruments of debt. So every dollar, every euro, every yen, every peso in existence is just debt. It's credit. Real money doesn't exist. And so when a government says they're in debt, it's because they have given the power to issue currency to a private central bank that then creates money out of thin air again and borrows it, lends it to the government. Lends it to the government for interest. And so it's all a scheme. None of it is real. When you take out a loan with a bank, that money never existed before you took out the loan. It's not like they have it sit in some account. It's not like they take it out of people's savings account. That would be illegal, by the way. When banks say, oh, we use the money that depositors put into the bank in a savings account and lend that money out to others, that is illegal. It's not just that they don't do it. It's actually illegal to do that. They create money out of thin air based on those deposits. So, for example, if there's $100 in a savings account, then the bank can loan out $900 based on that $100. It's called fractional reserve. And so that $800 created out of thin air never existed, typed into a computer because somebody promised to repay it, something that never existed before, and pay more the interest on it, which wasn't created. My dad fought me on that. He fought me. He said, that's not true. That's not how it works. That's not how monetary policy works. And I said, okay, Dad, look it up. Go and look it up, study it for yourself, ask those specific questions, see what you find. A week later, we're on the phone again. He says, holy shit, I studied economics at a big university. We studied monetary policy. I was a businessman all my life. I did plenty of loans with banks on deals, but I never knew that. He said, it's all a scam. I said, yeah. But he was one of the rare ones who was actually willing to even entertain this. But mostly, and this is just one subject, talk about medicine, talk about pharma, talk about science, talk about poisons, talk about poisons in the air, the food, the water, nanotechnology, hacking the biofield, secret societies, occult societies, satanic rituals. And when you see it because it's there and because it's real and you talk about it, you are destroying the foundation of the people around you that they base their lives on. And so this is what begins then to happen. You can't help it. They fight you. And in this whole process of awakening, a lot of things happen at the same time. On the one hand, you see the truth, which is exciting. On the other hand, you feel betrayed because you've been lied to all your life. You know, you are losing the script of life. There was a script before. There was something you were taught. You were told that if you go to school, if you get good grades and you go to college or university and you get good grades again, and finally after 15, 16 years of education, you get a degree, you can get a good job, you can make good money, you fill out the forms, you pay your taxes, you do what you're supposed to do, and you find your church or your charity that you work with, whatever. I mean, there's this entire script that's laid out. And when you see the truth, you cannot follow the script any longer. But then you go, so what now? If I can't follow the script, what am I going to do? My family doesn't seem to get it. My partner doesn't seem to get it. My husband, my wife, my best friend, just lost my best friend because she still believes all of those things and I can't relate any longer. She can't relate any longer. And those things then begin to happen. You become the outsider. You become the outcast. The beautiful thing is 20 years ago, 25 years ago, the outcast meant literally outcast. Like I was shunned by just about everyone. They would talk to me politely, but laugh behind my back. I didn't give a shit, but that's what was happening. They thought I was completely crazy. I lost it. And in their view, they were right. I had lost it. I had lost everything that they believed in. And most of them still do. Some of them have stepped out and see it too now. But this is the cult. And most people think that all the troubles that you have during awakening will come from the big institutions. No, it's the program itself that fights you. And the program is speaking through the people, through the hypnotized people, through their actions. And so I can't tell you anything but that steadfastness and strength have to be a part of that journey. It's just that way. The beauty is that we have much bigger numbers now. It's infinitely more relatable to many people than it ever was before. So you can actually find people. You can find people that speak about it, write books about it, do documentaries about it, that meet in groups about it, online, offline. That now does exist, which is beautiful. But we are still in the baby stages, in the very early infancy of the psychological effects, the spiritual effects, the sociological effects. Like we're just beginning to integrate this into our being. We're just beginning. Let's not fool ourselves. We're literally just beginning to integrate this back into our being. Literally. I just laid all that out. So what is life like after waking up? And I literally put that question up there just to be clear that there is no such thing as, oh, I have woken up. I hear people over and over again, I'm awake now. I've woken up. I see it now. And I go, we're all in the process of awakening. There is no one present that lives the full spectrum of what is available, of what is no one that I've met anyways. Some people are much closer, but what really matters is to continue allowing it in. And granted, 25 years into this journey, and like I said, never having fully been programmed to begin with, which is, I consider that great. But not a product of of my actions. It's more like, I don't know, some resistance, or I closed my ears on certain things, whatever it was. Maybe I some things are easier for me now, and they are, because after such a time, we've created community, we've attracted similar people into our lives, that and others who see and have experienced similar things. But there are many people out there who are smack in the middle of it, and they're going through the motions, the pain, the questions, because you have left a cult, or you're leaving a cult. And there's all kinds of stages. In the beginning, you want to resist all of it. Like everywhere you go, it's not that you want to fight necessarily, but you have this inner urge to resist it all, to make sure that everybody knows you are not conforming, you are not obeying, you are not part of it. And I don't know if you can help but live that while it's happening inside of you. You have to express it somehow. But then, you start to integrate things enough that you go, I can take a breather here. Not everybody has to know what I really think and feel at all times. I don't have to justify it. I don't have to show it. I don't have to show that I don't belong. I just am. I am who I am. I'm okay with that. That's a first big breather. We can chill a little, relax a little. And then then you start going and asking those questions. What do I do now? I don't believe in this thing anymore. Like when people get disillusioned with politics and they go, this is just a feedback loop, same cycle over and over again. But what now? What's an alternative? And you start asking those questions, and there is no immediate answer that is satisfying. That vote for another person was, yeah, that's what you do. That was the answer. You don't like that person, vote for another one, or run yourself, or whatever. And now all of a sudden you go, what if there's something else? Or, you are, you were always part of the family that, and the family doctor plan and whatever. And you did your checkups, and you did your, your physicals and everything. And you followed those recommendations. And, when the doctor said, take this or take that, you did it because that's how it was. And now you're going against the grain. Now you're not filling that prescription. And the people around you are like, what's wrong with you? Your doctor told you to do this. Why are you not doing it? They know what they're doing. You go, I don't think they do. I don't think he knows what he's saying, or she. I think they're pretty programmed. I think they have a vested interest in me filling that prescription. I think they actually make a lot of money if I keep taking that, and it's not serving me. I'm not saying everything all the time, but generally. And I just recently saw a case where somebody was a closet awakener, meaning a person that was going through massive awakening for a long time, but didn't show it to the people around him, and was diagnosed with cancer. That's the big C, and that, and all that it entails, all of our associations with it that we're programmed to. And that was the straw that broke the camel's back, so to speak, because now that it came down to it, he wasn't willing to play along any longer. And so he had to show his cards and went the alternative route, which is, how they call it, but holistic medicine, taking the full body, mind, spirit approach and doing it that way, and was shunned by family, by his peers in his work. I mean, just people actually felt they had the right to treat him as an outcast because he made those decisions for himself. And that is a very common thing. Family members will do that. They won't respect your sovereignty. They won't respect your choices. I mean, we saw it throughout the 2020s now. That was a big theme, right? People didn't respect those choices. And those are the times when sort of the wheat gets separated from the chaff because you can't pretend any longer. So most of all, this is a time where everybody just almost automatically grows more backbone, more spine, and just continues to say yes when they mean yes and no when they mean no. But what I have observed, what Kristin and I have observed, is the severe psychological implications. Because most people think when you go through this spiritual awakening that now you have all this extra energy and power and knowledge and wisdom, and now you can embody that immediately. And that's just not the truth. We're human beings. We go through phases. We go through stages, and the cult is still there, and the cult still hates this, dissidents. Just it's programmed to hate dissidents, and that all is still a reality. So we wanted to give that space and honor that space without having to change it right away, because what I've noticed is that if you try to skip important steps in this journey, and if you try to just rush through something because it doesn't feel good, it doesn't work. It'll just come back to you later stronger. So you can't do that. You have to honor every step of the way. And if that step right now is sadness and grief, that's okay. I don't know if anybody has said this to you, but it's okay. Like, it's okay to grieve. When like I told you, I was an athlete, and there were days of my life and whole periods of my life where I believed that this is the most important thing that I could possibly do at this moment in time. Like, that's significant. It was significant for me to ski down a hill as fast as I could. And when I realized that I was just skiing down a hill, whether I was doing it or not didn't matter one bit to anything significant whatsoever. That was such a big aha moment that I looked at the life that I had built and the stuff that I was invested in, my energy was in, my attention was on, watching sports games or, whatever that was. It all fell apart. My identity fell apart. I needed to go through that. I needed to see the sort of the bullshit in it, right? That was grieving. I was grieving that. I was grieving the people that I was losing because they were still in it. I was grieving my identity because I was attached to it. That's who I was. And that is okay. I realized that's okay. It's part of the whole thing. But then you start grieving all the other stuff, all the false securities, all the false beliefs, all the false impressions that we have, Oh, when it all comes down to it, then this institution will protect me, or this institution will do something about it. And you realize that's not how it works. And then towards, more towards the end of the first big wave of awakening, you get to the savior stage. That's the really big one, where whatever that savior figure is in your life, could be an institution, could be a position, could be a religious figure. There's something or someone that you put all your faith and hope in, that figure, that savior, that hero will ultimately fix it all. And that's where most people stop. And this is controversial because people say, John, do you not believe in a creator? No, I don't. I know the creator. I don't believe in the creator. I know the creator. There's a vast difference. There's a vast difference. Of course, I know. However you picture that creator, whatever that image is in your mind, it's not like that creator figure is going to come into your life and just move around things so it's better for you. And orchestrate everything without your participation, and it just gets taken care of. And one of the awakening traps that the cult sets for you is setting up these gatekeepers that show up or are presented to you as these glorious figures. Surrender to Jesus. I know I'm literally poking the hornet's nest here, so I know what I'm doing, but surrender to Jesus. Surrender to Jesus. What does that mean? To the man that people think of that lived, you know, Yeshua UNCENSORED. Is that the man that we surrender to? And how do we surrender to a man that isn't any longer? What does that mean? So what do you surrender to? To a man's will? Or do you surrender to a higher form of consciousness? Let's call it, in this connection, Christ consciousness, which is a vastly different concept, because where can Christ consciousness reside only? Where can it only be embodied? It can't be embodied out there. It can only be embodied in here. There's no other way if you surrender to it. And so wherever you look, the cult will try to pull you back in. It's what it's programmed to do. You can't blame the people. You can't blame one single person. That's the program. That's how the program functions. Think of the Matrix. Think of the movie. Think of Morpheus explaining to Neo. Everything here is designed to keep you here. Because the cult needs the energy, right? It needs your energy, your creation power. And to anyone who is programmed still, I sound like a complete freaking lunatic. And I understand it. I can see it, why they would think that way. And when you go and when you share what you really think and what you really think or feel with somebody who is still fully programmed, you sound like a complete lunatic to them. But after a while, it goes both ways. You know, after a while, they also sound like complete lunatics to you. And that can be a problem. So what I've noticed those many years in is that my judgment has softened a lot. Not always, but most of the time. It's a natural thing that I have much more acceptance now. I can accept that that's where that person is at, and that there's no necessity for me to change them. Plus, I don't have the right to. If they ask me a question, I'll answer it truthfully, but I have no right to want to change them. And these are all steps of the deprogramming. These are all steps of the awakening. I have a wonderful, wonderful added bonus, right? Kristin has been all of her adult life a counselor, a coach, learning and studying some of the most wonderful transformative processes. So I'm sitting at the well, literally. That's what made this entire journey much easier for me, because what I was, whenever I was seeing or falling into a hole, there was something to help me with that, whether that was a meditative journey, a prayer, a process. And most people don't have that, because there's this entire new world that is available to you that has infinite potential. And learning how to tap into that changes everything. Otherwise, you're just pushed and pulled between two different perspectives. And so I can't, I can't tell you that everything will be unicorns and rainbows, because that's not my experience. However, if you allow this process to continue to happen, and if you can actively help yourself through it, you will unlock potential inside of you that you didn't know existed. And that potential is what can deal with the challenges that come your way in completely different ways. You actually tap into creativity. You'll find that rather than falling into despair, your creativity will be supersized, will be super imposed when you have a challenge. It's like you go into overdrive. It's the exact opposite of before. And this is also a big thing, is when people really commit to this awakening journey, then the reaction to problems is exactly the opposite of the cult. The cult sort of goes into embryo mode when something bad happens. It's like, oh, I can't, I don't know. And you just go into, because you have access to so much more. You have access to spirit, to truth, to a vastly different field of information, and you have your creativity intact. So, all that to say that there is not enough conversation around this, in my opinion. It is the phenomenon of our time. It is a tremendous healing journey, and it needs more conversation, more wisdom around it, more truth, and more space. Because every day people join this journey, and it's time that they found great and authentic spaces where they can feel like they can be themselves, because that's what's lacking. Lacking is this courage to be yourself when everyone around you is not. And that's why we feel we need to give it more space. That's why we created this After Awakening retreat that's happening in 11 days, July 12th and 13th. It's an online event. We simply wanted to, for as many people as possible, to have access to it from all over the world. And it's specifically designed for after this big wave of this first big wave of awakening, for that period. What it means, what it's showing us, what are the hidden secrets, how do we unlock those doors that we're now seeing? How do we set that potential free? How do we find new perspectives? How do we find meaning? How do we find purpose? We're redefining, in this period, we're redefining our lives. We're redefining our priorities. How do we do that? What can you do to help yourself? What practices actually work? What meditation is a beautiful conduit, a bridge builder, if you will. That's what we've been doing for decades now. And we feel very, very blessed and thankful that we can do this with you all, for those of you who feel inspired to join us and to have this journey together. And when people show up and they give themselves permission and they commit, there's going to be some big shifts. They always happen. And then maybe a little bit of a lighter path forward, and I'm not saying that this is going to be over. People have this false notion that at some point it's all going to be through, and in a few years, everything's going to be vastly different. And once again, this is not my experience. It's not how life has ever worked. It's not how the world has ever worked. But I think what they mean is they will be different. And that is true. That is very true. So rather than having this expectation that the world's going to go through this huge ascension in a few years and everything's going to be different, I would bank on, I am going through this. I am doing this. I am going through my own ascension, and my life and my experience and my inner world will be vastly different. And that, I can tell you, is the truth. That is very true. And that continues to be true. And that brings the power back to us. It gives us control over this process to a certain degree, of course. And that is what's empowering. So if that all speaks to you, we'd love to have you. Go check it out, afterawakeningretreat.com. Feel your way through it. Put your hand on your heart. If you get a yes, we'd love to have you. If you get it, it's not for me right now. Totally get it. totally get it, then that's totally fine too. We really always encourage people to let spirit lead this, every decision. So yeah, I think this is it. It's quite the journey today. But all in all, I want to end this today by saying that you're already enough. You already have it in you. And you matter. You truly matter. Your presence has significance. It has importance. You being here makes a difference. And I believe in you. I always have. All right, my friends. Much love. Many blessings. We'll be back with you again very, very soon. Your environment shapes everything, your thoughts, your health, your energy. But most people never question the invisible field they live in. We did, and that's when FLFE found us. It's not a product, it's a field of pure life force energy that lifts everything it touches. We now live in it 24/7, and we would love to invite you to experience it too. Start your free 15-day trial now. No pressure, no strings attached. Just the truth, resonance, and peace.